What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today's video, we're going to be discussing another general manager candidate for the Detroit Lions. But the reason we're talking about this one today is because the Lions have announced they're going to interview him very soon. That is Thomas Dimitroff. Or Dimitroff. I think it's Dimitroff. Let's get it started.
You know, I got to shout out DoseOfDion, man, because it was actually the first time I went live on YouTube. And, you know, guys don't know, DoseOfDion, he put out a lot of good content for the Detroit Lions.
Welcome everybody to another video. Glad you guys are here. And yeah, I'm excited to do this video. I love doing these videos. I don't know what it is. I just love it because I do so much research. And once I get started, I just can't stop. I mean, I'm doing so many, numbers and draft picks. It confuses the heck out of me. And that's why sometimes I have to go back and watch my own videos because I can't remember which GM does what. But I do like these videos, and I don't really care about necessarily getting the news out right away. It's more about knowing the general manager and giving you guys all the information that I can about the person, and that way, maybe aid your decision on whether or not you'd want him as our next general manager. That's really the whole goal of these videos. By the way, I know I got the haircut. I know it's looking clean. Okay, you guys don't need to say anything. Also, the shirt, the SpongeBob shirt, no, this is not on the Dodge Shop, unfortunately. I think that's somewhat illegal to sell SpongeBob merchandise, but it is cool. So imagine if it was on the Dodge Shop and I came up with SpongeBob, then, we'd be in a different situation. Not sure what that has to do with anything. So let's talk about Thomas Dimitroff a little bit, the general manager candidate for the Detroit Lions. Now, we're going to go back to where it all began, the early life. Work our way through the story of Thomas. Now, let me just say, this is a very confusing story. He bounced all around, and honestly, some of it I just don't understand. So if I'm missing pieces, if some of it doesn't make a lot of sense, it doesn't make sense to me either, but we're going to do our best. So let's go back all the way to the beginning where he was born in Ohio, and he was raised in Canada. So basically, he's part Ohioan, part Canadian. Either way, he likes syrup. That's the end of the story. That's the gist of all of it, and he likes football. That's great. His dad was a college football coach in Canada, so he was the equipment manager. Of course, kids are always the equipment manager. He was the equipment manager. He played football in college as a defensive back. He was a multi-year captain for his college football team, and once he was done with that, he started to get right into scouting. So he got right into scouting business, and he joined the Rough Riders, Canadian Football League, as a scouting coordinator. Then, this is where things get confusing. In 1992, he then joined in Dallas, Texas for just 1 year only. 1 year. To track NFL transactions, NFL roster moves, and that didn't last very long. So the very next year, he went to Japan to work with his friend with his football team. Are you confused yet? I am absolutely confused. He decided to move back to the United States, which I think was a very good option for him because it really got his foot into the door, and after that, everything just kind of rode on from there. Now, his dad was already working with the Cleveland Browns as a scout, so it definitely helped him out, helped him get into the door. That's a great opportunity to take advantage of. His first full-time position in the National Football League and in front office was with the Detroit Lions. So he starts off by working with the Detroit Lions from 1994 to 1997. His next stint would take a few years with the Cleveland Browns, and ultimately then he would decide to rejoin the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick as a national scout. So what? With the Detroit Lions? What a crazy path this guy took, no question about it. So he joined back with the New England Patriots, so we'll talk about that a little bit later because I know some people don't like to hear that. But he was promoted there to the director of college scouting, and then he was ultimately hired by the Atlanta Falcons as their general manager in 2008. And this season, I guess, he was fired by the Atlanta Falcons, which he was even surprised by. So a crazy story, kind of confusing. I get it, right? From 2003 to 2007, he was with the New England Patriots. So he's working with Bill Belichick there. He's worked his way through the ranks, and the Atlanta Falcons said, you know what, let's give him a chance to be our general manager. And they did, and, he did some big things for them. He took them to places that, maybe they didn't necessarily expect to be, and he turned that franchise around just like that. Okay, now he's been a long time with the Atlanta Falcons. It's a lot longer than most general managers ever keep the position because in the NFL, those positions change like that. You have one down year, maybe 2 down years, and all of a sudden you're out of there. So the fact that he was able to stay there for as long as he was is pretty remarkable because you don't see that a lot in the NFL. Let's first just touch on the elephant in the room, the fact that he was with the New England Patriots, all right? Now, I know everybody doesn't want to hear this because of just what happened, and I completely understand that, and I can understand why the Lions would say, you know what? Maybe he doesn't, he's not bringing a Patriot way or whatever you would call it. But we may want to just steer clear of anything that has to do with the Patriots in the past because we're trying to go a different direction. I completely understand that. No problem with it at all. Anybody that's ever been within a Patriot tree will never be successful. That's not true. Right now, we see 2 general managers for the Titans, for the Buccaneers. Both those guys were in the Patriot coaching tree with Bill Belichick. And we know what they're doing, right? The Titans are a good team, and we know what the Buccaneers are looking like right now. So just because you had ties with the Patriots doesn't mean necessarily it's not going to work out. It just didn't really work out at all in Detroit. And I think a big reason for that was, honestly, Patricia as a head coach, it just didn't work out. It wasn't for him with the Lions, and it wasn't a good fit, and clearly we saw that. And I think we're seeing that now, honestly, without him, right? So I think that was a very big factor that went into it. So just because you had ties with the Patriots shouldn't necessarily disqualify you, but if the Lions want to take that and say, you know what, we'll just stay away because there's any connection there, I get it, but they are interviewing him, so I just want to point that out. That it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be awful, because it does work and is working in other places currently as we speak. One of the biggest things about him, once again, is that he has experience as a general manager. Now, this is something we've touched on that maybe the Lions are looking for. We talked about Louis Riddick yesterday. He doesn't have that kind of experience. You see a guy like Dimitroff here, and you say to yourself, okay, there is experience. And I actually read this stat today, and I didn't think it was true. The Lions have never hired a general manager with former general manager experience. Kind of crazy, right? They never have done that. So I guess that would be different if you want to change it up a little bit. That would be different on its own. And we've talked about a couple of guys with that. John Dorsey, Rick Smith. Now we talk about Thomas. So we touched on a few guys with that experience of being a general manager. Lions have never hired one of those guys before. So kind of interesting. But now let's take a look, and just completely dive into his time with the Atlanta Falcons. Again, I'm not really, I don't have any reason to, try to sell this guy to you, or I'm not super for him, but I'm not against him either. I'm completely neutral. I just want to learn about him, give you guys the information that I know. So let's take a look at his time with Atlanta, because honestly, that's really all I'm worried about, is how did he do as a general manager? Because now we have that resume to look at. And honestly, some people look at it as completely awful and they just kind of dismiss it because of the Patriots side of things. But it wasn't bad. It actually got off to a very good start. I think the last couple of years, though, it went just completely wrong. It just went really bad for the Atlanta Falcons, and obviously that led to him getting fired. But he took over a team in 2008 that was 4-12 the year before. They were going nowhere. They were a bad team, and that's why they were looking for a GM. So he steps in the door, and the very next season they're 11-5. From 4-12 to 11-5. You can't ask for much more than that. That is a complete turnaround. That season, they drafted Matt Ryan with the third pick in the draft. Not the toughest pick to make, because you are the third pick, but he did find their franchise quarterback, as he continues to be their quarterback in his first year as their general manager, and teams can mess up on that. But to go to 11-5 from 4-12 was enough to get recognition nationally, as he was the executive of the year. So in his first year as a GM, he was the executive of the year. Now that's something that you can't take away from him. The next season, they went 9-7. The season after that, 13-3. He was once again the executive of the year. They earned a first round bye that year. So obviously a hot start. The year after that, 10-6. The year after that, 13-3. A very hot start. What you can see for Thomas here is that they just got off and they were firing on all cylinders, right? They were making it happen. But the next 2 years, they didn't happen. They went 4-12. What you see here from looking at the record is that when you see that 13-3 year, the very next year 4-12, that 13-3 year with Mike Smith, they were very close to going to another Super Bowl. That could have been the second Super Bowl that he would have went to as a general manager. But what happened that 4-12 season? Well, if you ask anybody, if you look it up, basically the answer I've gotten is injuries struck, and they struck in the worst way. Like I will talk about, I don't know if I said it or not yet because I'm hopping in to say this. He built a lot of weapons. He would build his teams about those flashy wide receivers, how difficult to make for defenses. Well, Julio Jones got hurt, Roddy White got hurt, Steven Jackson, the running back, was hurt. They were just completely injured, and it was a big reason that team went from thinking they could be a Super Bowl team to talking 4-12. And then the next season, and they finished 6-10, they decided, okay, this is the last year for you, Mike Smith. We got to do a new head coach in here. So they bring in the new head coach, and they're back at it. Some success with two different coaches, which I think is something that just can't be overlooked. But you also have to dive into, why did that happen? What was the reason for the big fall off? And, that led to them bringing in a new head coach. They brought in Dan Quinn. They didn't fire their general manager, but they brought in a new head coach and Dan Quinn. And it, wasn't completely awful. They went 8-8, 11-5, 10-6. But after that, 7-9, 7-9. And now we know that he got fired after an 0-5 start. He said to himself that he was actually kind of surprised by his firing, but he understands that it's a results business. And he also said that he felt like they were losing the fan base, so it was something that the owner had to do. And for the business side of things, they had to make the move. And we know right now where they're at is they've improved a little bit under Raheem Morris as their interim head coach. And maybe that points to maybe it was just completely a head coaching problem that they had here. But obviously, if he was there when they brought him in, that's not really a good look for him. It's kind of the situation that I can say we somewhat had here. Where hey, Bob Quinn brought in Matt Patricia, so you fired Patricia, but Bob Quinn, you kind of had to go with him, right? Because you were the guy that brought him in, and it just didn't work out. One of the interesting facts about Dimitroff here, he had 6 playoff appearances. He had 4 NFC South titles. He had a Super Bowl appearance, which obviously, they don't win the game, but can you really blame that blown lead on a general manager? I don't think you can, right? He helped build the team to get to the Super Bowl, and the most successful general manager in their history in terms of that stretch. He was the most successful general manager. I mean, he won over 50% of his games. I think he won like 55% of his games. His total record there as a GM was 109-87. So not a bad record, right? He led them to some, postseason experiences. And also, he was there when they went to the Super Bowl and helped build that team. But really, it's what have you done for me lately is where the big issue comes into play. Because when you see 7-9, 7-9, 0-5 fired, before we get too much into that, I want to go and look back at, what he does, all right? What are his tendencies? What are the tendencies that he's going to bring if he was with the Detroit Lions? Starting off with his draft tendencies. Now, this is one of the most interesting things that I took away from him is that if you look from his drafts from 2008 all the way through 2019, there was at least one traded in every single draft. At least one. That's kind of crazy. You don't hear that a lot. Now, again, I know he has that Patriot, just a little bit of ties in the past. But to me, just because you have those ties doesn't mean you're going to try to go the Patriot way about things. And he didn't. Think about it. They hired Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn had no former experience with the New England Patriots. So it's not like he brought him in because, he was a Patriot, so I brought him in. That had nothing to do with it. Also, when you look at his drafting style, to me, it wasn't exactly like the Patriots do things. Look, one thing that Atlanta did with Thomas is that they were pretty darn aggressive, is you can't be conservative about the way you do things. He was completely against the thought of being super conservative. And I think that points to him making a trade in every single draft that he was in. And one of the most trademark moves, I guess you would say, that Thomas made was 2011, when he traded up from number 27 to number 6 in the draft to select Julio Jones, which is clearly a still cornerstone of their franchise, one of the best receivers you could honestly say in NFL history. I mean, he's a really good receiver. And they made that move from 27 all the way to number 6 in the draft, trading up with the Cleveland Browns. And they gave some capital away to make that happen. Whoa, they gave some capital away. 5 picks were involved. They gave them their first-round pick for that season, which was 27, their first-round pick from the next season, their second-round pick and their fourth-round pick from that season, and their fourth-round pick from the season after. They gave a lot of picks up to move up, but they got Julio Jones. And his reason behind it, he said, was because he knew how much stress a top wide receiver like that could put on a team, and he felt like they could use that with Matt Ryan, give him, a weapon like that. It'd be very tough for defenses. And it was tough for defenses. I mean, he also drafted guys like Calvin Ridley. He made it tough for defenses in terms of the passing attack, how you were going to stop them. But two of his biggest flaws as a general manager was his inability to consistently build an offensive line. He hit on some picks via trades, but he also missed on a lot. I mean, one of his first picks as general manager in 2008 with Baker, it didn't work. He just really couldn't find tons of success building an offensive line there, building through the trenches. But he was definitely able to get the wideouts. He was able to build some weapons. He was, pretty solid with the secondary. He actually brought in Desmond Trufant, who is actually right now a Detroit Lion. But one of his biggest issues was really trenches. Now, he has hit on certain picks, like he brought in Grady Jarrett, right? That was a pretty nice pick, and that really helps their defensive line. And, he brought in pass rushers. He brought in your Takk McKinleys. He brought in your Vic Beasleys. Now, when it comes to free agency, he was hit and miss just like everybody is. But if there's one thing he will do, he will sell jerseys. He'll bring in some excitement. There's no question about that. I mean, there's definitely questions about how he does in the trenches. But in free agency, he hit on guys like Alex Mack, which obviously he's a good trenches guy. But, you got Michael Turner in there. Great running back for them when he first came in. I mean, that he's just really well. Mohamed Sanu, there's the Lions connection. Matt Bryant. And then there was also some misses. You have your Steven Jackson, who was just riddled by injuries. The running back couldn't make it happen. Ray Edwards, that's one of those pass rushers that were really good before he got there, and then he got there and it worked. But he went after a lot of pass rushers. You Takk McKinley's, Vic Beasley's, Grady Jarrett, went after a lot of guys that get to quarterback. A lot of those hit. Some of those also missed. That's just going to happen. Tyson Jackson, that didn't work out so well either. So clearly hit and miss with free agency. Landed some big name guys. He will sell jerseys. I will tell you that. If you want some excitement on the roster, he will do that. My biggest concern clearly is just how will he draft for trenches? But he wasn't able to hit on that offensive line or the trenches consistently, which to me definitely concerns me, because I know that's really where the game starts. I mean, you can have all the weapons, but if you don't have a good offensive line or defensive line, there's an issue there. Now, currently, right now, I think Bob Quinn didn't do a terrible job of addressing the offensive line, and I think, the Big V pick signing, we'll see how that turns out. It's definitely got time to prove itself. But I think he built a young foundation there, which could be very helpful if a guy like Dimitroff was here. A lot about Thomas Dimitroff here. So what I want to do is quickly just dive into the pros and cons, all right? Here is the pros and cons that I took away. Again, I have no reason to cheer this guy on or be against him. I'm just completely neutral with this. The pros and cons that I took away personally, the first pro is this. He was the most successful general manager in that stretch in team history, which is impressive. We know what they did, the postseason success. And the fact that he was able to turn them around and make them competitive so instantly, to me, is what's very impressive. It wasn't like it took a lot of time. And usually when you're looking for a new GM, your team's terrible. So for the Lions here, we'll see how they finish this here. But if you want a guy that can at least prove that, hey, I can turn this around instantly, well, he was able to turn it around instantly. There's no question about that, as they were able to find success right away. He also was able to find a franchise quarterback. Again, not the most difficult selection because he had the third pick in the draft. The Lions won't have that, so who knows how he'll do drafting a quarterback. But he didn't have to worry about it because he found him just like that. So, the question is, how would he do with the Detroit Lions? Jim Schwartz came in and they selected, Matthew Stafford with the first pick, but he got the first pick in the draft. It was a no-brainer who you were going with. So it wasn't like they had to worry about finding a quarterback. Could he find another quarterback if he was tasked with that? And he probably will be tasked with that at some point if he was our GM. Can he find that? One thing that he did do is he brought in Dan Quinn, which you could say was kind of an issue. I mean, they did have success with Dan Quinn for a couple of years, and then it just went downhill. That could be a pro or that could be a con. They also did bring in Kyle Shanahan, which was clearly a good move. Kyle Shanahan was their offensive mind for the Atlanta Falcons, and it was clearly a good move, and it really helped them, go to that Super Bowl. And obviously we know how Kyle Shanahan, went on to be the head coach now of the San Francisco 49ers, and it seems like, he seems to be a good coach for them. He led them to a Super Bowl. One thing that I've seen a lot of people say is they're trying to take away the credit from the general manager as like, okay, well, they only went to the Super Bowl because Kyle Shanahan was there, which I'm sure he helped and he was a part of that. They also brought him in, which you have to give him credit for helping bring him in. But it's not like this team was bad before, or they didn't get, before they went to the Super Bowl. It's not like this team was bad. I mean, they were a really good team, right? For the last couple of years before their coaching staff was fired. I mean, they went 13-3 twice. Lions. I don't know if the Lions have ever won 13 games in a season. I mean, have they ever won 13? Okay, they've won it plus the playoffs, right? 13 games in a regular season. They did that twice before they went to the Super Bowl. To me, a general manager can only do so much. I think a head coach is, more involved. The players are obviously the most involved on the field, but they build the team. If it's like, oh, I missed a field goal, just little things affect that too much as a general manager. But to go 13-3 twice and have success with two different coaches, that speaks to, okay, maybe there's some versatility here where, he could be successful with a guy like Bevel or with a different type of coach, right? Could he show that he could be successful with multiple guys and it's not like, hey, I need to go get this guy? To me, that's honestly a little bit something I like to see, that he has success with two different coaches. Now, when it comes to the concerns that I found building the offensive line, the fact that he was part of the Patriot tree honestly might just hurt him alone. And it's not really fair to say that would kill his, that would necessarily kill the fact that he could be a GM. But for the Detroit Lions, they might just want to say, you know what, we just want to stay away from it. We just don't want those ties there. It may not be necessarily an issue that we see, but we just don't want the ties there because we don't want to just have that on you, okay? We don't want to have that on you that, hey, you were part of the tree, so you're going to be bad. We don't want to put that on you. I mean, look at the fan base. Look at the fan base reacting to it. A lot of the fan base looking at this saying, wow, he's just terrible because I don't want to get a Patriot guy. And, you don't want to bring a GM that's automatically going to have that fan base not behind him. He said that they were losing the fan base, so not having that support behind a general manager, it concerns me. I mean, I think you need to have a support behind a guy that you hire. Maybe he would, maybe he wouldn't, but it just seems like the support wouldn't necessarily be there, and I think that's an issue, because I think he's proved that he could turn around franchise instantly. I think that's fair to say that because they just want to move on as far as possible from how that happened, and that could honestly lead to the fact that he just may not get hired just for that simple reason alone. One of the pros to that actually could be that maybe they want to have to change up the way that they scout, because obviously we just had a guy with the Patriot ties, and he had some of those before, but I don't see him as a guy that necessarily drafted the Patriot way. I mean, he was aggressive. He moved around a lot. And again, the Patriots don't draft extremely well. And one of the things that I think you need to separate is that when he would talk to Bill Belichick about certain moves. So obviously that made concerns of people. But Bill Belichick, according to him, said this: you will know your organization better than anybody else will. And I guess Bill Belichick reportedly was against the fact of them making that big trade, that blockbuster move to go get Julio. But he said, you know what? Forget it. I do know this organization better than anybody else. And I think this is what this organization needs. And he was aggressive enough to say, you know what? Forget it. I'm going to go make it happen. And they did. And I think you could say that it was a good move. So, they had a lot of success early on. Things just kind of went downhill. And maybe, it was just time for a change. And that's what he said about the owner, is he just felt like, you know what? He understood the move. He thought it was time for a change. The fan base was kind of losing it. From a business side of things, sometimes you just kind of have to let it loose. And you just have to say, you know what? Unfortunately, it's just time to make a move. But at the same time, and he has that experience, which I think the Lions could absolutely be looking to, and that's another pro. But at the same time, the fact that he has those ties, this inability to build, an offensive line, which I think, may not be a huge task for him, because I think there's other tasks that he's going to have to do. Can he find a franchise quarterback? I don't know if he can. I know he found Matt Ryan right away, but he had a third pick in the draft. Can you find one with a 10th pick or 11th pick or a 15th pick in the draft? Will you able to find him around that area? Can you build a defensive line, which is something that the Lions seemingly need help at? I don't think the Lions need a lot of help there. I actually think the defensive line is going to be okay. I think it's just a lot of injuries have been killing them, and surely, there's moves they're going to have to make. But I think it's really the, other places like the linebacker group that's going to need work. Can he work with Darrell Bevell? I think he may be able to. Now, unfortunately, there's no ties. I wasn't able to find any ties between him and Darrell Bevell along the way. So there would be no connection there, which is coming in. Tons of connections between Thomas and head coaches available other than Dan Quinn, which Dan Quinn wants to go to the college level. And personally, I wouldn't want to bring in Dan Quinn. Okay, we're not trying to be, the Falcons now. We're trying to be the Detroit Lions. So, I think it wouldn't be a terrible decision. He's definitely not the top of my list, but I don't think, I necessarily hate the thought of doing it because, that stat speaks out to me. The Lions have never hired a general manager with former general manager experience. And clearly, we haven't had the most success at the GM position. So maybe it's something that the Lions need. Rick Smith, another one of those guys that I don't necessarily hate, and I don't think he's been terrible. The way that he was rated in his time. All right, this is from the Falcons page. This is how they graded him by year. In 2008, they gave him a B. 2009, a D minus. 2010, a C plus. 2011, an A minus. 2012, an F. 2013, a C. 2014, a C. 2015 an A minus, 2016 an A minus, 2017 a C, 2018 a B. So that's how they graded him. I mean, it's really difficult to judge on how a guy drafts, but that's how the Falcons fans saw it after his time with Atlanta. That's how they graded him by year. So, for me, I think there's good, there's bad, there's always going to be that. You just have to make that decision on, do you like his personality? Does he fit with the personality that Sheila Ford has out for him? And he may not. I don't know what Sheila Ford is looking for. I don't know what personality trait she wants. I don't know what kind of culture she wants to build here, but we'll find out when she hires it. How much of the experience factor does come into play. How much does that come into play for Sheila Ford Hamp? How much do they really take a look to that? Because there was good and there was bad, but you're going to find that with every GM that you look at. So how much do you look at the factor that he had experience? I look at that as a very big factor. Louis Riddick doesn't have that experience. That's one of the biggest turnoffs for me. But one of the biggest turn-ons here is that he does have that experience. Now the Patriot tree may scare some people. It doesn't scare me that much because to me, I think what happened here is Matt Patricia just didn't work out, and I think him being a coordinator, never doing it for, it just didn't work out. He had his own way and he tried to be, this strict, and it just didn't work out because the Lions, they're not a very successful organization, and to have a guy that came in with that mindset, it just didn't work out. They need a guy that's more uplifting, more positive. So, we can get into that. We've talked about that many times before. Personally, I'm not all over this move, but I'm not completely against it. I understand why the Lions will be looking here. So, for everybody that's freaking out about this, I don't think there's any reason to freak out. The Lions are doing what they're going to do. They're going to look at everybody. They're going to give everybody an opportunity to interview, and they're going to weigh their options 6 weeks down the road, and we'll see what decision they make. But I don't think there's any issue with bringing in tons of guys to interview. This is way more people the Lions interviewed before they hired Bob Quinn already. So what? Look through, figure out what you want to do. I like the fact that Sheila Ford Hamp is willing to go out there and just take a look at everybody available and try to get their thoughts on everybody. I think that's the best way to do it. See, what's out there. Take a look at every person, whether or not you think it would work or you don't think it will coming into it. Have an open mind. Check out every person. See what what their mindset would be coming into it. What plans they would have, and that's kind of how I look at it. So let me know your thoughts, comments below. Thank you for watching, and I'm out.